Hi, I'm Dr. Robin Koslowitz, clinical psychologist, parenting educator, and post-traumatic parent. Welcome to the Post-Traumatic Parenting Podcast, where we learn to provide our children with a healthy childhood, even if ours was anything but. Or maybe we had a wonderful childhood, but recent events in our lives have left us reeling. Let's face it, after 2020, we're all post-traumatic parents now. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another really exciting episode of season 3 of the Post-Traumatic Parenting Podcast. I think you all can hear I've had such a busy day, but I was so excited for this interview. So today I am introducing an author whose one book I read and her other book is on my TBR list, so I can't wait to read it. It's like a real, I think Sofa-Bed Island is like a real summer read. Like it's giving me that vibe. Like I want to read it really soon. So this is Jodi Cutler. She is the author of Sofa-Bed Island and Rally Caps. She is an advocate for parents of deaf and hard of hearing kids. And I want to really, really hear her story. So welcome, because I think you have a lot in common with the post-traumatic parenting community.
Thank you so much. I think we are all members of the Post-Traumatic Parenting Committee in our own special way.
Oh, yeah. I think since COVID, for sure.
I think since birth, and somehow we all navigate whatever it is we come into contact with, because I think post-traumatic parenting is a cycle. And we all have bits and pieces of what comes before us and what our parents have lived and what their parents lived and so forth and so on. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be a dirty word. Thanks to you, the more we talk about it, the more we're able to heal and move on.
Yeah, I was actually having that thought about, when someone says to you, a lot of your, someone just sent me a research study that basically shows that a parent's ability to self-regulate and have emotional intelligence highly predicts their children's self-regulation later in life. And I said, it's a quick and dirty test if you're a post-traumatic parent. If you go, oh no.
I think it's more like that's the hope and the dream.
Yeah, like, great, this is fabulous. My kid is set up for success. I think you're right. I think trauma is any experience too big for us to metabolize, and humans have had experiences too big to metabolize. Yeah. So Rally Caps is such a great story, and now it's a movie, which is so cool. I think that it's a movie that I feel like everybody should see. It's the kind of movie that you watch with your family so that you can have conversations. You watch yourself so you can cry a little, and you can laugh a little, and you can just be touched. But can you tell me the story behind the book and then the movie?
Okay, this is a doozy. This is a long one. First of all, thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate it. We created a family film. It's a feel-good film, and it had been a while since one had come out. That was a baseball camp story, and so the fact that you had that reaction makes me very happy.
Yeah.
The story began when my father sent me like a 2-page short story about when he got hit by a baseball bat, and I was like, oh, that's really cute. That could be a book. So from that moment, he would call, say, how are you? Write the book. And that went on and on. But in the meantime, I had moved to Italy with my newborn baby and my new husband, who was from Italy. So I was living in Baltimore and grew up and raised in Baltimore, and I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in Baltimore. So the idea of moving to Italy with my new baby and drinking Chianti and eating pecorino and all the spaghetti alle vongole in the world sounded like an unbelievable experience to me. So off we went to my new husband's home in Tuscany. And 1 month after we got there, we were at our pediatrician's office for his wellness checkup. And at our pediatrician's office in Baltimore, we had expressed some perplexities about the fact that my son was not reacting to sound, and he wasn't babbling, and he was extremely mobile and intelligent, but we were not having any expression. And so we told our pediatrician. He performed a test called a Bowl test, which is ringing little bells, and he did not turn. So my pediatrician was concerned, and he referred us to an audiologist in Florence. When my son was 11 months old, he was diagnosed with profound bilateral sensory neural hearing loss. He was deaf.
Wow.
I was told in Italian. I didn't speak Italian. It was very difficult to grab hold of everything that was happening. All I understood really were my mother-in-law's reaction and my husband's reaction at the news, and then I understood what was happening. Yeah. So in Italy, their approach to hearing loss is to have the child wear hearing aids and start speech therapy immediately. So that was what was called the oral approach. And my son started wearing hearing aids, and we went to speech therapy 3 times a week. I did not speak Italian, so I learned with my son at speech therapy. And this went on. He wore hearing aids, and he was doing pretty well. When he was 8 years old, he suddenly was falling behind his peers, and I was the one who had to teach him cuss words so that he would be at the same level as his peers, which is never a lovely thing for a mother to do.
Mom.
Go mom. All right. So I had started researching cochlear implants. He had not been a candidate because he was a good hearing aid user until that, once again, that gap started growing and he started becoming more and more frustrated. And so we did the research, we went to Pisa, and they agreed to do the cochlear implant after a series of tests that were performed. So, and throughout this, my father would be, "Hi, Jodi, how are you? How's Jordan? Write the book." And I'm struggling to learn Italian. I'm struggling to teach my child Italian because nobody in our area used sign language. I didn't know Italian, so I had to struggle to learn Italian. Adding sign language on top of that would have been impossible for me.
It's like 2 languages.
Exactly. And sign language in Italian is not the same as ASL or American Sign Language. So I would have been teaching my son sign language to communicate with no one. Not in the United States and not in Grosseto, which was where we lived. So he has the cochlear implant surgery, and he does remarkably well. Because he had always had speech therapy with his hearing aids, his ability to make the transition from what he heard with hearing aids to what he could now hear with cochlear implants, which was more similar to what we hear as hearing individuals, he was able to make that transition extremely fast. And there's actually a picture of him when he was at my mother-in-law's house calling on the telephone for the first time. He had always hated using the telephone with his hearing aids, but he has this huge smile on his face when he's using the telephone and he hears my voice on the other side of the phone with his cochlear implant. And so I saw my son transform from an angry, frustrated, resentful, temper tantrum throwing child into a child who was happy, who was hugging us, who was lovable. And it was like I could suddenly take a breath because I saw my son taking a breath himself. At that point, I was ready to write the book with my father because I wanted to thank the medical professionals who had helped my son learn to hear throughout the years. So my father and I went back and forth through email, and we wrote rally caps and published it. And as persistent as my father was about making the book, that's how determined he was to make the book a movie. We are self-published. We don't know anyone in the entertainment industry. For 15 years, my father would send letters to directors, send letters to Disney. He would send like swag. Wow. He would do everything possible to reach out. And this one director, he was like nice, and he wrote my father back and thanked him. And like, so my father, what did he do? He kept insisting with that one director. Yeah. That one director was Lee Chipola. And Lee, during COVID, was out of work. He took some type of hike through the mountains of Colorado, had an epiphany, and decided he wanted to make a baseball movie. Called my dad and was like, "I'm going to make your movie." My dad, super excited, called me in Italy on March 20th, 2020, and said, "Jodi, the director's going to make the movie." And I said, "Dad, you can't make a movie. You have no idea what's coming. COVID is in Italy. If it was in Milan, it's in New York, and it's going to be everywhere." My dad did not talk to me for 6 months. He was so mad at my reaction.
Oh my gosh. Wait, I'm stopping you. There is so much about your story that I need to unpack. First of all, I cannot imagine navigating a medical challenge like that in a country where I don't speak the language. Like, it's hard enough to manage a medical crisis with a kid. Like, getting a diagnosis like that, when you speak the language and you know the medical system, I imagine the Italian medical system is different than the United States medical system. Like, how did you like even cope?
So I have to say, for hearing loss, Italy was in a very good spot compared to the rest of the world. When I came back to the United States, I had my son's hearing checked, like on a visit. I had my son's hearing checked, and he received similar results in the United States as he did in Italy. So that already made me feel better. I think I'm the type of person that when I see everybody around me fall apart, I'm the one who's strong.
Okay.
There's like this video that's called Stuck on an Elevator, and it's about two people who are stuck on an escalator. It's about two people who are going up the escalator, and the escalator suddenly stops. And it's like they're looking around. What do we do now? What do we do?
Right.
And so they're standing there and they're calling for help. And that's very similar to what happens with anyone who experiences a diagnosis of a disability of their child. You're stuck. And it doesn't matter how logical the next step forward may seem, because if you're on an escalator, you just walk up the stairs.
Yeah.
But when you're petrified and you don't know what to do, you can just stand there. And sometimes the couple will walk up together. Sometimes a couple will stay petrified with feelings of guilt, and they will not move for years.
Yeah.
And that child will stay in that position because the parent can't get over the grief and the guilt. And then there are some times when mothers carry the husband on their shoulder and they bring the whole family up the escalator with them. And that was, I had a supportive husband, but that's basically what had to happen.
Right. Yeah. You had to come to terms to help your kid. Like, there wasn't really an option of, I'm sure you had your moments of grief and trauma, and, I think we all have that with whenever our kids are going through something. I know I have a child who was diagnosed as neurodiverse, and, there's that initial moment of like, oh no, right? And I think a lot of post-traumatic parents think that somehow having that initial trauma reaction means they love their kid less, or they're not as accepting, or not as, encouraging as they should be, not as strong as they should be, as opposed to it just being like, that's a normal reaction to really scary news that's going to impact our family forever.
So a lot of times that's true what you're saying. It's like you have to get into action because you want to help your child. Like, you put all of the feelings aside and you smother them. And that's what I did. I just went into action. And I remember, so when my dad and I published Rally Caps, I went searching for the groups that I thought it could help, because I wanted my son represented in literature. I wanted to find other children like my son. So I found the Pediatric Cochlear Implant Circle on Yahoo. And that was my first support group that I found. And I found everybody was not only speaking English, but they were speaking cochlear implant journey. Yeah. And I remember sitting in front of that computer and bawling my eyes out, because it was like somebody had finally switched the emotions that I wasn't able to feel, that I could now feel because my son was doing okay. And I'd found people who were going through and had been through what I had gone through. And I started healing with a support group online, and then created the same thing in Italy. And now I have a forum called Affrontiamo la Sordità Insieme, and we have 18,000 families that we help in the journey. Wow. So support is really important. Yeah. Feeling the emotions in a safe space is really important, but we don't always have the time, the occasion, or know how to let that happen.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said for being around people where you don't actually need words to explain what you're going through, because it's like such a profound Me Too experience. And I know I've seen it, like, I am a child who lost a parent in childhood, right? And, so I volunteered for organizations where they support other children, like teenagers who lose a parent, or young adults, or children. And there's something to be said for like going to grief camp, where you're around other kids who like know what it means to like live on an oncology ward, or know what it means to like have that awkward moment when someone says, oh, and what does your dad do? And you're like, actually this is about to get really awkward. So, right, like when you meet someone for the first time, let's say, you know, college or whatever, right, like just those types of experiences when you don't have to explain them. You know, and I've had that in so many groups that I've spoken for, whether I'm part of that, you know, demographic, or whether I'm not, there's something to be said for the power of being around other people. Even if your experiences aren't identical, there are certain things you don't need words to explain. And no one gets it unless you've been part of that category.
Everything you're saying is such profound truth. I can tell you that when you're raising a child with hearing loss, you are acting like mom is a verb before you're hearing your child say the word mom. And it can take a long time for a deaf child to say the word mom. And so when the child says the word mom, and everybody else who has kids who were born the same time as your child is now practically reading, sure, it's like you are silent about it, even though it is the greatest joy in the world. But when you find a community that understands how important that one word mom is, you feel like you belong. Yeah. And what you're saying about what you went through and how now you're able to be in that space and offer help to those families and other children heals the inner child in yourself as well. And it's everything. It's everything for people who finally find their people.
Yeah, it's so important. It's interesting because my mother-in-law is a wonderful person, but she comes from a generation where, you know, you don't talk about your problems. You just like get on and you manage it and you do everything. And one time she was telling me later in life, she developed a chronic medical condition and she joined a support group. And she said to me, you know, I always thought that this charity that you're involved in, that the fact that you like go to these weekends for kids who lost a parent, like I always thought like you're just teaching them to like feel sorry for themselves and it's such a bad thing. But now that I went to this support group, I see the power of being around other people who are coping with the same challenges that I am. And she's like, I don't know if you realize it. I was like, I realized, like realizing what people think is very much part of my job description. So yes, I did realize that you had that attitude, but again, it's a very common attitude of a certain generation, right? Like, you know, of that, like can do, like, okay, you know, we can't change it, so make the best of it. Not that you can make the best of losing a parent, right? But like that sort of attitude, if you're teaching them to feel sorry for themselves. And she came to that realization, you know, there's something to be said for the support of other people who get it without words. Right now, I am a caregiver of my mom, you know, lives with me and she doesn't always remember who I am anymore. Like we're in that stage of caregiving. And there's something to be said for being around other caregivers who get it in a way that other people just don't.
That's a lot that you are dealing with on so many different levels. Another aspect of the support groups is the information. They know the latest treatments, the latest therapies. They know what hasn't worked. They can give you a propositive approach that will save you time. And time is so precious in these journeys. Failed therapies that don't work for other people that you can read about and you can avoid and you can go in a different direction. Or you can evaluate whether or not you agree with the person who's saying that based on your situation. Because as you well know, every situation, every family, every person is an individual. Yeah. And you really have a lot to deal with. And the fact that you still are helping people in their journeys, I hope that is what gives you strength to be able to keep going and doing what you're doing.
I think becoming the resource you would have needed when you started out is almost always a sign of health, unless you're overdoing it and not taking care of your own needs. But I think it almost always is. I know for me, I think something that brought me to tears, I go into schools and I do these like anti-bullying like exercises and workshops and things like that. And I had this kid say to me, and I do these like emotion workshops and like understanding yourself workshops. And I have one school that I'm in every week. I'm in the 5th grade classroom. And I had this kid come over to me and say, you know, I'm really a very shy person. and like I never know how to talk about feelings and friendships and all these things, and your class has really helped me, because like you think about these topics and like no one else thinks about these topics, and it really helps, because then I was able to talk to my friends about what it feels like to be shy, and that sometimes I don't say something, but I don't call them back, but it's not because I didn't mean to call them back, it's because I was feeling too shy. She just was able to have this open, vulnerable conversation, and her friends were supportive. And I just had this feeling of like, wow, shy little fifth grade me, if I would have had me, that would have been great. And it's so true. When you can be that resource, like I'm sure you would have needed you when you first got your son's diagnosis, you would have needed you to sit down and say, all right, Jodi, here's the deal, right?
Right, that's what I'm trying to create for other families. I'm really trying to create that, because I made so many mistakes along the way that for every like difficult moment and challenge that I had to deal with, if I can save another person that experience, that just makes everything worthwhile,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think that really comes through in Rally Caps, because it's not like a preachy movie. It's not like Saccharine Sweet. It's a real baseball story first, which I really appreciate, because I have a son who likes baseball. So that just like, it's like the kind of movie that mom is going to love and a kid is going to love, because it hits that intersection. But it's really about friendship and difference. And like, it is so heartwarming, but not in a sweet way. It doesn't give you the easy answers. It's not just like, and we all went home happy, la 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 la, happily ever after.
Thank goodness. Also, so many times the child who has a disability is portrayed as the weak character. And in this movie, the child with the disability is the strong character who, based on overcoming his disability, offers the courage and the friendship to the child who has typical hearing, who's suffering from anxiety. So we wanted, the children who have hearing loss actually have hearing loss in real life. So we wanted there to be representation within the movie. I don't know how many of your viewers are familiar with Coach Ballgame, but James Lowe is Coach Ballgame. He plays himself in the movie, and he is just dynamic. He speaks child, and he speaks child baseball, and all the positive, wonderful things that sport teaches you. Yeah. That is who he is, and that really transpires within the movie. Aside from being able to have Judd Hirsch in it and Amy Smart, who actually played me, that was a very cool moment. That's when I kind of realized that the book became a movie, when there was a scene where she's talking to Judd Hirsch about getting hit by a baseball and falling to the ground, and the coach, who was her pop, screaming, "Get up, get up, keep playing." And so that was when I realized that the book was actually a movie at that moment. It was craziness, but yeah.
Yeah, I think, I never thought of that until you mentioned it. Like, that the heart of like the deaf character is the one who's the powerful one. He's the one who's showing someone else the way, that's so cool, because you're right. Usually the disabled or the differently abled person in any movie is the weaker character. There's very few, maybe they're like Rain Man, right? In that sense, where they're like wise in some alternative way, but they are the one in need of help. They're not the one offering help.
Right.
Wow.
Yes.
That's
so
really
that was
cool.
really important. So when you told me that we were going to have this interview, I was trying to think about post-traumatic parenting and how traumatic situations growing up prepared me for having a child with a disability. And oftentimes I find myself in the middle, and I'm a child of divorced parents, and I was often in the middle between my two parents. And so I've often found and I navigated that in as healthy a way as I could, so that when I found myself navigating hearing loss, there was, now it's really evolved, a huge divide between the deaf community, capital D, and the cochlear implant community, where children who are born deaf use listening and spoken language. And so when I first started everything, I started blogging, because one of the parents from the cochlear implant circle suggested I do that. And when I started blogging, I started learning, and I started studying, and I understood where the deaf community was coming from, which made me more able to interact with them and to just simply share my story without telling anybody else what they should or shouldn't do. Just share my story with how my son uses his cochlear implant to hear and how he's progressing, the ups and downs, and just being a voice. And the more voices we have, the more we can combat stigma and bring more awareness to everything that's possible today. So that's Rally Caps. And now fast forward, and what happens to so many families when there's a disability is that the mom takes over as a mom, she takes over as a wife, and she's trying to work, and she completely loses her spice as a woman. So Sofabet Island is about bringing the spice back, bringing the woman back to the mother, and what happens when you are 50 years old and you're reinventing yourself.
Yeah.
Also, how important female friendships are to help you through the journey. And yeah,
you're so speaking my language, I think, because I'm in that stage of life, right? Like I'm 48 now, so I'm at that stage of like,
oh my God, you look so much younger than 48.
It's totally genetic.
Oh my
I would
God.
love to take credit for it, but
you're very lucky.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
And
Shocking,
I also joke, I am basically a vampire. Like I work in like right now I am speaking to you from my basement office, which is my whole series of offices are all in a basement. I get no sun ever. So
it's your bat cave. It's okay.
Yeah, it's like, I'm basically a vampire. But I know what you mean, because there comes a point where you put so much of yourself into parenting, into work, into being a wife, into, whatever else you're doing, especially if you're like me in that sandwich generation of caregiving, right? That you do lose yourself, but then you want to bring your whole self to parenting. But you're like, wait, who's myself? Right? I feel like that, like as soon as I read the back of Sofabet Island, I'm like, this is going to be like a fun read, because it really is a coming of age story for us, for adults, right? Like we're also coming of age into a stage of life of like, maybe I don't have like a baby that needs to be like fed a lot of times a day, and maybe I do want to like reclaim something that's me, right? And I think you're right. We lose that when we're so can-do. I'm going to help my kid. I'm going to help I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a career woman. Like there is something lost in that.
And then there's menopause and all the things.
Oh,
and
yeah.
What you're saying about the sandwich, that's within the book. There's actually a mother who may have dementia, and there's a teenager who's going through boy issues. But the teenager is going through the boy issues in such a more emotionally intelligent way than the main character Sarah has her entire life. So
yeah,
it is about what you're saying about the sandwich, about having to care for your parents while having to care for your kids, but also caring for yourself and how important that is. And there's some sex and spice and all the things.
All the fun stuff.
You can't stop having sex.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like for me, this idea of self-care being childcare, right, that I had to come to, because I had this belief about being a woman and being a wife and being a mother, that like self-care was somehow selfish. But then you're not a self, right? You don't have, a sense of self to bring to your kids and your adult relationships with them as they start growing up. Like, you don't want to be that boring person who's like, a 1950s sitcom mom, like sort of like caricature, who like is only worried about if the roasted chicken came out good and, that's it, right? You just want to be a person. You want to be yourself. And yeah, time is the problem. But I feel like for a lot of us at some point, aside from like, I know for a lot of post-traumatic parents, I guess, will I be a good parent? Will I be a good parent? Will I be a good parent? Is like such a pressure that we do lose self. We do lose that like sense of like, wait, who am I? Where am I in all this?
So you're younger than I am, but we were conditioned from a young age. You go to school, you go to university, you get a job, you get married, you live happily ever after. I mean, you have kids and you live happily ever after. But nobody talks about what happens after you have the kid and you're married. It's like everything stops there. And we were so conditioned to what we were going to be when we grew up that nobody really thought about who we wanted to be
Yeah.
or who we were going to be. I'll never forget when I was going through my divorce, my father sent me Maria Shriver's book, Just Who Will You Be? It transformed my life. It gave me a completely new perspective. And then I started trying to discover who I wanted to be, not as a condition of life, but as a reflection of myself. Like, I used to love reading and I hadn't read in years because I was so busy taking care of my son. And so you start with the little things. And when you start with the little things, the pieces start falling into place and you start saying, oh, I like that. Wow, I really like that. And you may find yourself liking things that you had never been introduced to because maybe your parents like sports. Maybe your parents channeled you to a certain direction, but really, I mean, my daughter is love like singing and piano and all the things that were art. She's theatrical, and I wasn't like that. Where did she get it from? But it's fascinating watching her discover herself and how we at our age can discover ourselves again, and it can be beautiful. It really can.
Yeah, it really can. It's hard, I think, because I think we've come a long way, but I think we're still conditioning young women to a certain extent put the needs of other people over the needs of themselves. You know, like eldest daughter syndrome is, you know, trending on TikTok right now. You know, a reporter just reached out and asked me if I could, you know, I'm like, I don't know, not an eldest daughter, I'm an only daughter, so I don't know if that's both or worse. Like, I don't know if I'm both eldest, like I'm an only daughter, I have 3 older brothers, so I don't know if I'm like eldest daughter and only daughter, or I'm eldest daughter, or I'm youngest. I'm also the youngest in my family, so
bless Taylor Swift. Bless Taylor Swift for writing that song and for drawing attention to this, because it is truth. And everything you're saying, you are eldest and only. You have like the double whammy. So it's all falling on your shoulders.
Yeah, and it's just like so interesting because even now, I speak like, especially in post-traumatic parenting classes, I have very young mothers sometimes, like they're coming in, you know, pregnant, and they're young, and there's still that societal pressure, even with all the work and the advocacy that's been done, and with all the, why is the default emergency contact on the, you know, on the form mom, right? Like all of that kind of stuff. There's been so much advocacy, like, you know, Eve Rodsky's done that work, like there's been so much, and yet we still default to like the female caregiver role as if like you're supposed to love that. Not that you don't love it, right? Like I do love being a mom to my kids, but we do give young women that message of, you know, self is selfish in some way, and it's just not true, right? You're better at all, you show up much better in all those relationships when you're yourself.
Yes, and it is a journey to become yourself. It really is. And a lot of times, like, so writing Sofa Bed Island for me was extremely cathartic. I took a year off from men. I just sat in my chair and so I'm divorced myself, and I am not I don't have a man in my life right now. Maybe. And so I took a year off, and I really wanted to write this book, and a lot of it was processing relationships and sitting there. And after 1 year without any distractions of a man in my life, I was able to concentrate on my kids more. I was able to be more present and not checking my phone for texts and not worrying about another person. Sometimes you just need to dedicate the time to yourself as much as possible, and your priorities still are going to be your family and your sandwiching and your career. But when you take some time off, you really become more stable, and you can identify what you want in your life and what you definitely do not want in your life, because once your space becomes sacred, it's going to take a really strong person to make you give that up.
Yeah, it's true. I have a friend who's a very close friend of mine who's a very gifted therapist. We train together, and she's just brilliant. And I was talking to her about, somebody offered me a project that really sounded like something that normally would be right up my alley and I would love to do. And I said, I don't know what my hesitation is. I'm not only am I not saying yes, I think I'm going to say no. And I was like, I think I'm just aging. Like I think about taking this project on, and it sounds so cool, but it just sounds so big, and I just don't want to do it. Is this imposter syndrome? And she's like, Robin, what if you're just healing? like, and you just don't need to hustle anymore to the extent that you used to, and you've learned how to say no. Like, what if it's not about, like, I was thinking, like, am I just getting old, that I'm just tired? Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds like, it's so cool, sounds like so much work. Because 5 years ago I would have grabbed it. I would have, like, been like, all right, I'm gonna make this work, this is so cool, I want to be part of this, yes, I want to run this program, this sounds great, like, and I was like, I don't even know why I'm hesitating, I should grab it, right? And she's like, I think you're healing. Like, oh, perhaps, right?
That's a big thing for eldest daughter, like traumatic situation growing up, because what does it do? It makes you an overachiever, to always try to be the best at everything, never say no to anything. And you should be so proud of yourself, because you're setting boundaries and you're realizing that it's not the right time, it's not the right fit for you at this moment. And so I think she's right. It's hard to say no, especially when you're a person who loves project after project after project. It's good, you're filling your own space.
It's not that there isn't a pang every so often, like, oh, it would have been cool to be involved in that project. Like, when I see them succeeding, I'm like, oh, that would have been cool, but not cool enough for me to disrupt the life I've currently built. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which, like, it was just funny when she said it, like, hit me. Sometimes the best therapist can do that, right? Even though she's not my therapist, she's my good friend. But, like, that, like, line where you're like, oh, wow, yeah.
Good friends, good, smart friends are the best therapists. They see you in your most challenging moments, and they follow you through your difficulties, your highs, your lows, and they know you the best. And so I think you're really lucky to have a friend like that.
Yeah, you must have always had a lot of courage yourself, like, to be able to just, like, go to Italy. I mean, that's just, like, especially at such a young age, that sounds like so cool. Like, how'd you even have the guts to do it?
So when my parents were getting divorced, my mom hooked me up with my guidance counselor in school. And so my guidance counselor would always read stories of Nellie Bly. And she was a journalist who traveled the world. And I was fascinated. I'm like, that's what I want to do. And so I guess it just stuck with me. I just have always wanted to travel. I like traveling alone. I like living experiences, studying people, eating ice cream. And I don't know, sometimes you're just blind and you just do it.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah.
Are you naturally a people person? Like, is it easier for you to make connections?
I am naturally a people person, but I'm also one of those introvert extroverts. So
right.
I like my downtime.
To yourself too. Yeah.
I never realized that, but yes, it's a thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. Like, definitely. I wonder how many people think they're extroverts, but it's really a trauma response of, like, being the friendliest person in the room because then people are nice to you, and how many people think they're introverts, but really just the social world has been super, super challenging, and they actually are friendlier than they come across because it's just a protective thing. Like, I always wonder about that with personality theory, but how much of it is actually temperament, and how much of it was, like, very early experiences that taught us something?
Maybe people pleasing is a part of it, but I mean, I really, really like networking and talking to people because I'm curious about people, and that fills my being. And I like talking to people.
Yeah, I think the best novelists are curious about people. Like, I think it's like an exercise in such curiosity to write. Like, who is this person and why does she act the way she acts and why would she do that? I think it's curiosity in the end that, like, and it's interesting because I'm such an intensely curious about people person. Like, by nature, I'm fascinated by people, all people. It doesn't even matter. I can't even imagine somebody that I wouldn't be curious to interview. Like, you give me someone even, like, I don't know, morally reprehensible, I'd be like, but it's so cool, how'd you become that way? Like, I don't know, I just find people fascinating, but then I hate networking. Like, I hate actually meeting people in the real world. So I
think that you are outstanding at interviewing. You are authentic and genuine in your questions, and you dig to find answers. And I like how you talk about your own personal experiences based on what you hear the other person say. It's just very easy to talk to you. So I'm glad that you do this because you're excellent at it.
You also happen to be extremely easy to interview with really great stories. I mean, like, I can't even, like, imagine, like, being like, yeah, I think I'll make a movie with, like, no background, like, no Hollywood contact. Like, just like, yeah, we can do that. Like,
it's actually insane. It was, and I was fortunate, and fortunate to to have been involved in every single step of the movie making process from the beginning through filming. We filmed at Camp Scatico, and it was during COVID that we had we had to go through all the things for COVID. But I had been in Italy for 2 years, was finally back for the first time, and it was like a big camp experience. Like our kid actors were playing dodgeball at night, and we were eating spaghetti in the mess hall, and it was just so much fun to be with my father and my brother during the experience. And so after that, it was editing, and it was post-production, and the director was nice enough to Lee Chipola was nice enough to have me involved in every single step of the way. So now I find myself working for the JCC of the Palm Beaches, and I run the Palm Beach Jewish Film Festival too. So it's like now I'm on the other side of festivals, and it's just a crazy life. You really never know where you're going to end up.
It sounds like it, like when you stay open to experience. And also it just sounds to me like something we say in post-traumatic parenting so much, which is that your trauma can become your superpower, not in a toxic positive way, but like that capacity that you develop to deal with your trauma, you can use it and you can get to like crazy places you never thought. Like you just had this passion for your son to be represented, and everything else came out of that. Like, and this huge, amazing, ambitious project. It's not like you were 8 years old. You're like, I think I'll be a movie producer one day, you know?
That is true. That is all very true. But it's also hard when you are a parent and you know that you are responsible for some difficult moments that your children have, also based on what you went through as a child. Because as much as you try to mitigate, there are some patterns that you may not be able to overcome, and some mistakes that you make along the way. And so it's not an easy cycle to break, but we do the best that we can. And I think that the most important thing I learned was to validate when my children tell me something that they feel, even though I don't necessarily see it. So it's incredible how your children can be your life's greatest lessons. My daughter has taught me a lot. I am not an emotional person. She's extremely sensitive and in touch with her emotions, and I've learned a lot from her. Another aspect of having a child with a disability is how siblings are treated in the journey with a child with a disability. And my daughter, I wrote another book. It's called The Land of Between: From Birth to Cochlear Implant Surgery, to offer a resource to my families. And there's a whole chapter that Sophia wrote talking about how bad I made her feel one time when I reacted in such a negative way. And I realized that I was trying so much during my life to have my son be treated as a typical child that I didn't even explain to my daughter what his difficulties actually were. And so she is like a constant mirror to help me to be a better person and to realize that I have a lot that I still need to work on. And I learn a lot through my daughter.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's always that glass child phenomenon when you have a sibling, with a disability. It's just automatic that the child who's perceived as being less needy is just expected to your life works, so you can take a step back. I think it's very, very common for all of us. But it's true. Kids are the map, the mirror, and the motivation, and so true that she held up that mirror. I mean, my TEDx talk is about a time that I harmed one of my children due to my trauma. And, I tell over the story, I say it very facile, but my son asked me where I go when I go away behind my eyes, and he started to cry. And the power of that moment, he was really crying. It was really unnerving for him that I go away behind my eyes. It wasn't just a funny story, oh, isn't that cute? It was, I dissociate and I don't have that under my complete control, to the extent that my kids notice and they worry about it and they wonder if they did something wrong. It's painful and harmful. We learn from those moments, right? But at the same token, and we have to learn from those moments, but at the same token, we all have this fantasy that somehow we'll never traumatize our kids, or we'll do it all perfectly, and we'll just, I don't know where we got that myth that like we're going to have to parent perfectly or we're screwing our kids up completely. Like we're going to make mistakes, sometimes big and profound ones.
And it's okay, like, to anybody listening to this, if you've made a mistake, it's okay. It is okay. It's important that it was important for me to recognize the mistake and not kill myself over it. Like sometimes you just have to give grace to yourself, and that can be one of the hardest things to do, is to really forgive yourself for certain things. But listening to what you're saying, you like every time I have an idea, you put it into like this context that is that makes
because it's a framework. I think
sense.
I've spoken to so many post-traumatic parents that I hear the themes over after a while. Stories start to rhyme. Like we've all been through those kinds of things. But what I'm pointing to in your story with Sophia is you gave her space to talk about it. Like you even championed her voice in your book. Like you weren't like, oh no honey, you can't talk about that, I'll look bad. You were like, I want to hear your story.
That's true. I do look really bad, but that's what I was talking about. Like all the mistakes that I've made, if I can put them out there so another parent doesn't make it, I can look bad. It's okay. And yes, because her voice was really important and she gave me permission to use it, which was even more important. So hopefully it will help someone.
Yeah. And I think, she can help other siblings, right, in the way that you're helping other mothers. I think that's just super special and helpful to everybody. I think the more we talk and the more, we say, all right, I'm going to own my story because my story can probably help somebody else, I think the healthier the world gets. We're so much more united by our traumas than we are different, and I think when we see that, like everybody's been through something and everybody's coping with something, everybody's going to make a mistake, I think we get stronger rather than that idea that like we have to be perfect to begin with.
I totally agree. That's why your podcast is so important, and the fact that you keep talking.
So as we have to wrap up, because I'd love to I don't know, have coffee with you or something, but as we right, like next time, I don't know, we're on the same side of the Atlantic. So where can people find your books, all your current projects? Like, how do they find you?
Everything is on Amazon. Just research Jodi Michelle Cutler and you will find anything that you need. I'm all over Facebook and Instagram and telling stories every day. And my God, Sophia, she just got a tattoo. And she said all the things that happen. Open book right here.
Yeah, so we'll find you, and I'm sure you're doing all the author platform stuff on all the social media, so we'll link to everything in the show notes. And I'm really strongly plugging, if anybody's looking for a family movie to watch with your kids for a discussion and you'll all enjoy it, check out Rally Caps. It's on Amazon Prime, right?
It's streaming on Amazon Prime. If you go to the search bar and put in Rally Caps, you will find it.
Right, it's right there. So check it out, because it's really I have that list of movies that I say every parent should watch with their kids and discuss, Inside Out, or I have my list, and Rally Caps is in there of just you got to watch this movie. It's just such a great story and such a great conversation to have with kids. So
thank you, I appreciate it.
So check it out. All right, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. I think everyone's going to really enjoy this episode.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for using your platform in such an important way.
I'm here on social media to be descriptive, not prescriptive. I'm here to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain, but never to treat. If listening to this podcast helps you realize that you need therapy, I am all for that. But podcasts aren't therapy. Please reach out to a mental health professional licensed in your jurisdiction. You'll be glad you did. Wish Post-Traumatic Parenting was a talk show, not a podcast? You have a question for me or for my guests? Great news. You can ask those questions by following me on Instagram. My handle is @DrKoslowitz Psychology. It's also in the show notes. I love it when people reach out, DM, or post a question. Who knows, your question might spark an entire episode. Come join our community. We get it. We're post-traumatic parents too. Can't wait to hear from you.